In my family's accounting of the world, I am the quiet disappointment, the one who passed on law school, turned down a sensible career in finance, and instead disappeared into what my father calls the government machine. He says it with a particular shade of pity in his voice, the same shade he uses when describing a neighbor who made bad real estate decisions. What my family doesn't know is that I currently command 460 Royal Canadian Air Force personnel at 8 Wing Trenton. I'm Viveka Marsh, 32 years old, Lieutenant Colonel RCF. My primary aircraft is the CC-177 Globemaster III, a 4-engine strategic airlift workhorse with a payload capacity of 77 tons and a wingspan of 51 meters. I have flown in and out of landing zones in West Africa, the Caribbean after hurricanes, and the high Arctic. I have signed operational orders that moved more tonnage in a single mission than most Canadian companies ship in a fiscal year. I earn a salary with military allowances that comfortably places me in the top income bracket in this country. My mother thinks I answer phones for a colonel in Ottawa. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I could hear the country club in the background, that low murmur of people performing wealth at each other over glasses of Niagara Riesling. My mother's voice was warm and breezy, the way it always is when she's about to tell me something I won't enjoy. "Your brother's engagement celebration is this weekend," she said. "We're all flying out to Tofino. Isn't that lovely? The Whitfields have rented the whole lodge. Private float plane from Vancouver. Honestly, Viv, it's going to be magnificent." I was standing at my desk at the base, reviewing movement orders for a logistics exercise. Behind me, 2 captains were arguing quietly about fuel sequencing. I pressed a hand to my ear and turned toward the window. "I know, Mum. I booked my ticket weeks ago." "Good. And please don't bring that enormous military bag of yours. You know, the black duffel with the webbing. It makes you look like you're going on a camping trip. The Whitfields are Rosedale people. Old Vancouver money. Serena's mother summers in Provence." I watched a CC-177 taxi toward the runway through the window. The setting sun caught the underside of its wings and turned them copper. "I'll pack appropriately, Mum. Your brother has worked so hard for this," she continued, the warmth ratcheting up as it always did when the conversation turned to my brother Alec. "Did you hear about the Beaumont deal? He closed it last week. $42 million. The bonus alone, Viv, the man is going to be set for life. He's treating us all to spa packages at the lodge. $400 a session. Can you imagine? He's so..." I did the math automatically. $42 million deal at a mid-tier Bay Street firm. Alec's cut was probably somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000. Good money. Good for him. "And Viv, please, for the weekend, don't talk about work. Nobody wants to hear about logistics at an engagement party. It makes people uncomfortable when they don't know what to say." I think I said goodbye before I hung up. I'm honestly not certain. The next morning, I went to my closet on the base and unzipped the garment bag where I keep my service dress uniform. The dark RKF blue is almost black under artificial light, but in the sun it takes on a deep, rich color that I have always found quietly satisfying. I ran my fingers along the row of medals. The General Campaign Star, the Special Service Medal with the rosette, the Canadian Forces decoration. Each one a chapter, each one a place I went when someone needed help, and the phone rang in the night. My rank slides sat on their epaulettes, 2 stars and a crown. I zipped the bag back up and pushed it to the back of the closet. I pulled out a soft blazer, dark jeans, and a pair of clean white sneakers. Civilian armor, that was what I'd learned to call it. The costume I wore when I walked back into my family's world. I packed light, 1 carry-on. I have deployed to 3 continents out of a single rucksack. 4 days in Tofino is nothing. Vancouver International Airport on a Friday morning is organized pandemonium. I've come through YVR enough times to know it like a second base. The layout of Terminal D, the particular echo of the International Hall, the smell of salt air that sneaks in whenever the sliding doors open. I spotted them near the floatplane check-in counter, and I didn't need a radar system. My father was in his weekend uniform. Quarter-zip cashmere, chinos pressed to a knife edge, the Patek Philippe on his left wrist, catching light every time he gestured, which was often. He was talking at an airport attendant with the relaxed authority of a man who has never waited in a line he didn't choose to join. My mother was beside him in oversized sunglasses and a camel coat, holding a tote bag that cost more than a junior officer's monthly pay. She looked beautiful, as she always did. And then there was my brother Alec. He was wearing a linen blazer the color of cream, no tie, shirt open at the collar, the specific studied casualness of a Bay Street banker on leisure time. Serena was on his arm, looking radiant and slightly nervous. She was sweet. I had always liked Serena. It was the rest of them I was bracing for. "Viv," my mother clapped her hands when she saw me. "There you are. Oh, honey." The "oh, honey" was the tell. It always preceded a comment about my appearance. "You look tired," she said, touching my cheek. "When did this happen to your skin? You need hydration. SPF. Something. Serena has the most wonderful esthetician in Yorkville. I'll get you the number." "Hi, Mum." I kissed her cheek. My father gave me a nod that carried 20 years of measured disappointment in it. "Viv." Alec looked me up and down, smiled the smile that didn't reach his eyes, and said, "Nice sneakers. Very comfortable looking." "Thanks, they are." Serena fell in beside me quietly and squeezed my arm. She didn't say anything. Some kindnesses are wordless. At the check-in, my father began distributing the boarding materials with the theatrical care of a man who considers himself a very good host. He had printed everything in advance, separated it all into a neat document wallet. "Linda." He handed my mother her confirmation. "Window seat on the floatplane, port side, best view of the inlet." "Wonderful." "Elect Serena." He handed them a pair, front of the aircraft. Alec gave a thumbs up without looking up from his phone. Then my father's hand went back to the wallet. He produced a single sheet, different from the others. Not the glossy lodge letterhead with the gold crest. Plain paper. An economy booking confirmation. And for the floatplane leg, back row seating, the Zensero seat behind the luggage partition that sits directly above the pontoon strut. He held it out to me. I took it. I looked at it. "Now, I know what you're thinking," my father said, and his voice dropped into that register he reserves for delivering wisdom. "But I did this for you, Viveka. Think about it. You'd be uncomfortable up front. The Whitfields are there. They're friends from West Vancouver, their sailing club crowd. These are people in a certain income tier. I didn't want you sitting among them feeling out of place, trying to keep up with conversations about Provence and private equity." He squeezed my shoulder. "Back here, you'll be relaxed. You won't have to perform. You can just be yourself." Alex snorted softly, still didn't look up from his phone. "And honestly," my father continued, "you should be grateful Alec organized the lodge, because on a public servant's salary, Tofino is not exactly something you could." "Dad." He blinked. "I need a moment," I said, not loudly, just clearly. He smiled the way adults smile at children who are making a small scene. "Of course." I stepped back from the group. I was holding a plain paper boarding confirmation and thinking about what my old commanding officer used to say, that the hardest terrain you will ever navigate is not a mountain or a desert. It's the room where the people who love you have already decided who you are. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was a message from Sergeant Halloway, my operations NCO. "Ma'am, duty ops trying to reach you. Fraser Valley flooding escalated, provincial emergency declaration. RKF has been tasked. Wing commander wants you as mission commander for the airlift element. CC-177 is fueled and holding at YVR South Cargo. Crew standing by. They need your call, ma'am." I read it twice. I looked up at my father, who had already turned back to my mother, saying something about the lodge's wine cellar. I looked at the plain paper boarding confirmation in my left hand, back row, pontoon seat. I looked at my phone in my right hand, my aircraft, my crew. 77 tons of capacity waiting on a single word from me. I let go of the boarding confirmation. It fluttered down to the polished floor of YVR, turned face up, and came to rest against the toe of my father's Italian loafer. "Dad," I said. He turned around. He saw the paper on the floor. His face went the color of cold oats. "Pick that up," he said. "Viveka, you're making a scene." "I don't need it." He stared at me. "I paid for that ticket." "I know, and I don't need it." I typed 2 words back to Sergeant Halloway, "On my way." And then the doors from the secure airside area opened. Sergeant Holloway was in his service dress blues, pressed, immaculate, the RCAF wing badge glinting on his chest. Flanking him were 2 Canadian Forces military police officers, tall and precise in their dress uniforms, red lanyards, white belts, everything razor sharp. They crossed the departures hall in formation, not running, not rushing, just moving with the kind of steady, purposeful calm that makes crowds step back without being asked. The crowd was stepping back. My father turned to look. My mother lowered her sunglasses. Alec, for the first time all morning, put his phone in his pocket. The 3 of them stopped in front of me, with the last 3 paces of practiced military precision. Sergeant Holloway brought his heels together. The sound was clean and hard against the terminal floor. He raised his right hand to his brow in a salute. Crisp, unwavering, held. He held it. The entire departures hall had gone quiet in that particular way. That only happens when something shifts and everyone present knows it. The PA system chimed somewhere far away. Nobody was listening to it. I stood up straight. I let my shoulders settle. 20 years of training moved into my spine like water finding its level. I raised my hand and returned the salute. "Ma'am," Sergeant Holloway said, dropping his hand. "Lieutenant Colonel Marsh. Duty Ops has confirmed the mission tasking. The CC-177 is fueled and holding at the south ramp. We have your flight suit in the convoy vehicle. Wing Commander sends his regards and asks you to proceed at your discretion." He paused, then added clearly, "We have transport curbside whenever you're ready, ma'am." I heard my mother say very softly, "Lieutenant Colonel." I heard Alec say nothing. Alec had nothing to say. "Thank you, Sergeant," I said. "I'm ready now." The 2 MPs moved to flank me. The crowd at the check-in area parted. I stepped forward. Behind me, I heard my father clear his throat. "Viveka." His voice had changed. The comfortable authority was gone. What was left was something smaller, older, uncertain. What exactly is this?" I stopped. I turned around one last time. My father was standing in the middle of YVR's departures hall, looking at the boarding confirmations still on the floor, and then at me, and then at the military police officers, and then back at me. He looked like a man doing an equation that would not resolve. I reached into my carry-on. I had almost left it at the base, almost packed it away for the weekend like I'd packed away so many other things. But at the last moment I'd tucked it into the front pocket, the small black case that held my ranks slides. I opened the case, I took out the epaulets and, one at a time, fitted them onto my blazer shoulders. 2 gold stars, a crown. I turned to my brother specifically, because he was the one who'd said flying cargo planes must feel like a step up from commercial. "The CC-177 Globe Master 3, I said. 4 General Electric turbofan engines, maximum payload of 77 metric tons. Medical evacuation and humanitarian operations in Category 4 weather. The aircraft holding for me right now, on the south ramp, can carry every piece of luggage on this floor plus the Whitfield Lodge and still have room for your deal commission. I let that sit for 1 beat. And I don't ride in it, Alec. I command it." My brother's mouth opened. No words came out. My mother had a hand pressed to her collarbone. Somewhere behind me, a man in a Canucks jersey started clapping. Then a woman with a toddler on her hip. Then, one by one, the strangers who had watched my father hand me that plain paper boarding confirmations, the strangers who had heard "you'll be more comfortable with your own kind." They all started clapping too. It built into something that bounced off the glass and steel of the terminal roof and kept going. I didn't wave. This wasn't a performance. "Tell Serena I'm sorry I'll miss the party," I said. "And Dad, the next time someone asks what your daughter does for a living, tell them the truth. Tell them she flies." I turned and walked toward the south exit, flanked by the MPs, Sergeant Holloway 3 paces behind. The automatic doors opened. The cold, wet Pacific air hit me in the face like a greeting from the world I actually lived in. I didn't look back. The Fraser Valley operation ran for 41 hours. In that time, my crew completed 16 sorties. We airlifted insulin, dialysis equipment, infant formula, and potable water to communities cut off by flooding for 4 days. We extracted 12 seniors from a care facility whose emergency generator had failed. On hour 39, I was coordinating a second airlift element with BC Emergency Management when someone held up a phone showing a CBC News alert. RCAF CC-177 transport crews lead critical flood relief mission in Fraser Valley. The journalist had spelled Lieutenant Colonel wrong, but got the rest of it right. I handed the phone back and went to find the thermos of coffee someone had left on the tailgate. I made it to Tofino for the last evening of the engagement weekend. I came straight from the airfield in Abbotsford, still in my flight suit, carrying my overnight bag. The floatplane pilot didn't blink. He'd seen stranger passengers. The Whitfield Lodge was everything I'd expected. Raw cedar beams, floor-to-ceiling windows over the inlet, the particular West Coast understated wealth that announces itself through quality rather than volume. The guests were well-dressed and spoke in complete sentences. I was standing near the fire pit with a glass of sparkling water when Serena's father found me. He was a compact, direct man, the kind of BC businessman who built companies before IPOs existed and still arrived first to every meeting. He crossed the patio, bypassed 3 of his own guests mid-conversation, and stopped in front of me. Lieutenant Colonel Marsh. His handshake was the handshake of a man who respects competence above almost everything else. I've been following the Fraser Valley response since yesterday. My cousin's family is in Chilliwack. You got medical supplies to their street on your second sortie. He shook his head slightly. Outstanding work. Thank you, sir. The crew deserves the credit. Leadership decisions shape those outcomes. He glanced around the patio. Alec didn't tell us what you did. I had to read it in the Globe. Alec may not have known the details, I said carefully. He looked at me with the clarity of a man who has spent 40 years reading people and chose not to comment further, but he raised his glass. Thank you for what you do, he said. My family is grateful. When he walked away, I looked out at the inlet. The water was still and dark. Somewhere beyond the black ridgeline of Vancouver Island was the Pacific, and beyond that the shipping lanes, and beyond that the routes I'd flown over and over in all hours and all weathers. My brother appeared at my elbow. He was holding a glass of whiskey, and he had the look of a man who'd been thinking about the same thing for 2 days and hadn't found a way out of it. The Whitfields know who you are, he said. It wasn't an accusation, just a fact. It seems so. Their son was looking you up an hour ago. He showed me a photo of you with the Minister of National Defense. That was a capabilities briefing 2 years ago. Alec was quiet. The fire popped. A log shifted and settled. I didn't know, he said finally. I tried to tell you. At Mum's birthday dinner 2 years ago, I mentioned I'd been promoted. You said, that's nice, and asked Dad what he thought of the Leafs' third-line options. And the Christmas before that, I told you I'd been in the Caribbean after the hurricane. You said, oh right, you were helping with relief flights or something, and then asked me if I'd seen any good beaches. He winced, once, then again. I'm not trying to make you feel bad, I said, and I meant it. 41 hours of operational tempo burns the performance out of you. What I had left was just the truth. I'm telling you, because I need you to understand, it wasn't a secret I kept. It was a story you never asked me to finish. He looked at his whiskey. The commission the firm made on the Beaumont deal, he said slowly. You know what I did with the bonus? Before the spa packages. I paid down a line of credit. The condo is mortgaged to 92%. The car lease is 3 years. The watch. He glanced at the Rolex on his wrist, and for the first time I saw him look at it without pride. The watch is the worst financial decision I have ever made. I bought it 2 weeks before a deal collapsed, and I was quietly eating instant noodles for 6 weeks hoping nobody noticed. I looked at my brother, my older brother, the golden one. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. I've been jealous of you for years, he said. I didn't understand what it was, but that's what it was. You have something that can't be leveraged or mortgaged or performed. You are who you say you are, every single day. He shook his head. That's not nothing, Viv. That's actually everything. I looked at the fire for a while. You can change the ratio, I said quietly. Start small. It doesn't have to be all at once. He nodded, mostly to himself. We stood there together without talking. The water in the inlet was cold and dark and perfectly still, and the sky above Tofino was doing something extraordinary with the stars, the whole sweep of it more than you could take in at once, the kind of sky you only see when you're far enough from the city for the light to stop competing. My father found me before the last float plane back to Vancouver. He was standing on the dock with his hands in his pockets, looking across the water. I almost walked past him, but I stopped. "The Whitfields told me," he said, "about the flood operation. They had CBC on in the kitchen." I waited. "You were on the television," he said, standing at the back of an aircraft giving orders. Standard debrief position. The loadmaster needs to hear clearly over the engines. He was quiet. The dock creaked under our feet. A float plane buzzed somewhere across the inlet, its navigation lights blinking green and red in the dark. "I didn't know," he said, "what your work actually was." "I know, Dad." "Why didn't you?" He stopped himself. I think he already knew. "When I got promoted to major," I said, "you asked me if it came with a pay bump. When I received my general campaign star, you asked if that was for participating. When I told you I was responsible for an aircraft worth over $230 million, you told me that was taxpayer money and not to get too comfortable." I kept my voice even. Not cruel, just clear. "I stopped trying to tell you eventually. Not because I was hiding it, because it stopped feeling worth the correction." He subsubs this. "I'm proud of you," he said. "It came out rusty, like a door opened for the first time in years. It landed differently than I had expected. Not like fireworks, more like a window finally unsealing in a room that had been closed too long." "Thank you, Dad." He reached into his jacket, a folded check, his universal solution. "I want to make it right. The difference in the airfare or a contribution, a donation to something you care about." "Put it away," I said gently. He looked at the check. He put it back. "What I'd like," I said, "is for you to tell people what I do. The next time someone at the club asks how your daughter is, say, she's a lieutenant colonel in the Royal Canadian Air Force. She commands a transport squadron. She does this." I looked at him steadily. Not because I need the credit, because it's true, and because I have worked very hard at something that deserves to be said out loud. He was quiet for a long moment. "I can do that," he said. "Good." I boarded the last float plane. The pilot banked south and climbed, and suddenly Tofino was a cluster of warm lights below us, and the inlet was silver black, and the mountains on either side were enormous and dark and ancient. I pressed my face briefly against this cold window glass. Isaiah 40:31 has always found me in the air, uninvited and welcome. "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." I was soaring. 3 weeks later, I was back at 8 Wing Trenton reviewing the after-action report from the Fraser Valley operation when my phone rang. Toronto area code. My brother. "Hey," Alex said. "Hey." "I Googled you, properly, not just the Globe article, all of it." "Okay." "There's a photo on the National Defense website from 2019. You're on a runway in Senegal shaking hands with the Foreign Affairs Minister. We flew in election monitoring equipment." "Right." A pause. "And there's video from the Caribbean Response in 2022. They interviewed you on the tarmac." "I remember." "You look," he stopped. Started again. "You look like someone who knows exactly where they are and exactly what they're doing." Something in my chest loosened, a tension I had carried for so long I had stopped noticing its weight. "I do," I said, "I really do." "I'm sorry, Viv. About the sneakers comment, about all of it." "I know you are." "And?" "Serena's dad called our office. There's a corporate sponsorship connected to some veteran housing initiative the forces are running. He suggested we look at it. He mentioned your name." "That's nothing to do with me," I said. "That's you going out and earning something." "I know. I just wanted you to know he thinks well of you." "He thinks well of good work," I said. "That's all that is." After we hung up, I opened the top drawer of my desk. There was a challenge coin from the 429 Transport Squadron, a photo of my crew after the Caribbean operation, a letter from a family in Chilliwack thanking the RKAF for the insulin delivery that reached them on day 4. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I had picked it up from the floor of YVR after Sergeant Halloway and the MPs, and I had stepped away from the check-in area when no one was watching. The plain paper economy boarding confirmation, back row, pontoon seat, people who understand the value of $1. I smoothed it out carefully and set it in the drawer beside the challenge coin and the letter from Chilliwack. Forgiveness is not amnesia, it is carrying the scar without letting it steer. For a long time I had let that scar steer me, toward silence, toward smallness, toward the back of every plane, not anymore. I closed the drawer with a soft click. I picked up my pen, signed the last page of the after-action report, and walked out to the flight line where my crew was already running pre-flight checks on the CC-177 in the cold Ontario morning. The engines would run today. There was somewhere to be, there always was. And wherever that place was, I would not be in the back row. If this story found you today, if someone in your life has ever handed you the wrong ticket and called it kindness, then you already know what it costs to keep showing up. Subscribe so we can keep telling these stories together, and drop a comment below with the words "I belong in the cockpit." Let's remind each other exactly where we stand.